If you post a haunted house online and strangers start dreaming of it, take the ad down. Or better yet, run. Welcome back to Haunted Real Estate, where homes don't just haunt you, they list you. Tonight's story takes us to one of the most infamous addresses in American horror lore, 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York. A place whispered about in books, films, and nightmares. But this isn't about the murders you've heard of. This isn't about the blood or the basement or the screaming walls. This is about what happens when you try to sell a story the house never wanted told. How are you holding up these days, really? We hope you're getting enough sleep, or at least enough quiet to hear your own thoughts before they're not yours anymore. Because this episode is about a real estate listing that refused to stay down. A house that made itself known not through possession or poltergeist, but through something far worse. A signal that reached into people's dreams and brought them inside. Tonight we follow Megan, a new agent looking to prove herself with a high-profile sale. A smart listing, a famous address, and a simple goal. Flip the house and forget the past. But the house had other plans. The house didn't want a buyer. It wanted an audience. It wanted eyes. It wanted memory. And once the photos were online, it started spreading. Not like a virus, not like a ghost story, but like something that always existed, waiting to be seen, waiting to be recognized. So if you've ever scrolled past a listing that felt too familiar, a doorway you swore you'd never been near, but could still describe down to the floor, creak in the front hall. Maybe it wasn't your memory. Maybe it was the house remembering you first. Megan hadn't been in the business long, but when her agency offered her the Ocean Avenue listing, she knew it was her shot, not just because of the notoriety of the house, but because no one else wanted to touch it. The official line was that the property had changed hands so many times that it was impossible to assign any historical liability. But unofficially, everyone knew what 112 Ocean Avenue was, and most importantly, what it had been. Still, Megan didn't believe in curses, or haunted bricks, or past lives clinging to wallpaper. She believed in angles staging lighting and buzz, and this house had buzz built in. The front yard was neat, the shutters painted black, and the arched windows on the third floor gave it a vaguely European charm if you squinted hard enough. She walked through the house with her phone in hand, snapping photos for the listing. Most of them were boring, well-lit, and uneventful. The only oddity was the light in the upstairs hallway, which flickered every few seconds despite no bulbs being out. She made a note to mention it to maintenance, but thought maybe it added character. That night, she uploaded the photos to her agency's dashboard, wrote a caption about the house's classic lines and historical relevance, and scheduled the post for the next morning. Then she slept, or tried to. At 3:14 a.m., she woke up sweating, heart racing, the echo of a dream still fresh in her ears. She had seen herself standing in the foyer of the house, only it wasn't quite the same. The floors were darker, the light redder, and the shadows longer than they should have been. When she looked at her own reflection in the mirror by the front door, her face was wrong, tilted like a copy that had been run through a bad filter. She chalked it up to stress and turned over, willing herself back to sleep. The next morning, when she opened her email, she found dozens of new messages flagged under a thread marked urgent. Each one came from a different IP, different name, but the subject was always the same. I saw it too. One user claimed to have dreamt of the house for years, never knowing it was real until now. Another said they recognized the window because their sister had drawn it constantly as a child after sleepwalking. Megan scrolled through them, all disturbed but not convinced, until she found one message that included an image attachment. It was a drawing done in pencil of the hallway upstairs, right down to the crooked picture frame and the flickering light. Her stomach turned. She hadn't posted that image publicly yet. It had been taken but never uploaded. She checked her drafts, and sure enough, it was still sitting unpublished. There was no way anyone outside the agency had seen it. She closed her laptop and tried to shake it off. Viral creepypastas weren't new. Maybe someone had guessed. Maybe it was coincidence. That afternoon, she tried to delete the listing just to be safe, but the system wouldn't let her. Every time she hit remove, the page refreshed and the post stayed up. Not just that it began appearing on other real estate platforms. She had no access to Reddit threads, Zillow clones, even a Facebook group for haunted homes she'd never joined. People were tagging her name, asking questions, demanding answers. One user even said, "You put it in my head, now it's in my house." The agency told her to lay low, ride it out, enjoy the publicity. But Megan couldn't sleep anymore, not because of fear, but because of familiarity. Each night the dream returned, always, at 349, always from the top of the stairs, looking down, always ending with her reflection tilting in the mirror. And behind her, a dark shape growing sharper each time. She stopped checking the listing, stopped answering emails, but the images kept changing. The ones she had uploaded were no longer static. One photo showed a figure at the window, another a shadow at the edge of the frame. She knew they hadn't been there before. She checked the metadata. The timestamps were all correct, untouched, but the content had changed. Like the house was editing itself, making itself more visible, more threatening, more real. And worst of all, people were contacting her, not to ask about buying the house, but to describe where she had been standing in their dreams, what she had said, what she had worn, even what time she had turned to look over her shoulder. They knew her better than she knew herself. And one email simply read, "Stop looking into the glass. It's starting to look back." Megan stopped trying to explain it to anyone. After the third sleepless night, her friend said it was just internet hysteria, some kind of algorithm-fueled coincidence, but they didn't have dreams where a house rearranged itself to trap them in hallways that hadn't existed a second before. They didn't wake up with the taste of sawdust in their mouths or the faint imprint of an old-fashioned doorknob on their palm. She started documenting everything. Screenshots of altered listings, audio recordings of her sleep talking, which always began with the words, "It's still there," and every morning the camera roll on her phone had one new image never taken by her, always time-stamped at 3:14 a.m. Sometimes they were blurry photos of the house exterior. Sometimes they were shots from inside the foyer looking up the stairs. But one morning the image was of her own bedroom, captured from the hallway, as if someone had opened the door halfway and taken a picture, before retreating silently. She moved apartments that same day, didn't tell the agency, just packed up and left. But when she opened her laptop at the new place, the homepage was already showing a draft of a real estate ad. She didn't write. The address was still 112 Ocean Avenue, but the headline read, "Now showing inside," and the main image was of her new living room. She threw the laptop against the wall. It didn't break. It simply restarted and reloaded the same listing. The house was following her, or maybe it wasn't following. Maybe it had just pulled her inside the moment she'd uploaded that first photo, and everything else was the dream. She called her supervisor, asked to be removed from the case. They said she already had been, and that her name wasn't in the system anymore. When she tried to log into her agency account, it told her no user found her emails bounced. Her phone, plan canceled, her bank account showed zero balance. Like she'd been peeled off the surface of the world, slowly and cleanly. Except for one thing, the listing was still up now, with a new name under the agent profile. Megan. Just Megan. No last name, no contact info. Just a single line that read available for viewings after dark. People started showing up at her apartment. Strangers who claimed they'd seen her. and one man said he had driven 6 hours because he dreamt of her voice calling him to the basement. A woman brought flowers and said she was sorry for what the house had done to her. Megan told them to leave, to forget her, but they kept coming one by one. Never in groups, always quietly, always with the same vacant look, like they had just woken up and didn't know why they were there. She stopped answering the door, nailed it shut, turned off all the lights and covered every mirror. But the photos kept appearing now in the cracks of her wall paint and the condensation on her bathroom mirror. Once she found her own face inside the pattern of her bedsheet folds, and in the background was always the same arched window from the 3rd floor of Ocean Avenue. She began to hear clicks, faint but rhythmic, like the sound of a camera shutter hidden in the hum of her refrigerator or the creak of her floorboards. She stopped sleeping entirely afraid of what would come next. And then one day, the listing changed again. Now, it showed interior shots of a dark room, walls lined with pictures, and in the center of the frame was her sitting with her back turned, hunched over a table covered in photos, and beneath the image was a caption that simply said, "She sees you." Now Megan ran. She left everything behind. No phone, no ID, no laptop. She bought a bus ticket in cash and rode until the end of the line, a small town where no one knew her name. She rented a room above an old hardware store and tried to disappear. No mirrors, no internet, just long days, sweeping floors and reading paperbacks by candlelight. For a while it worked. The dream stopped. The images faded. Her mind quieted until the day a customer walked in and handed her a flyer. It was a real estate circular printed in cheap black and white, and on the back page next to an ad for lakefront property was a small square, showing the front of a house with arched windows and black shutters. The caption read, "Now accepting offers for 112 Ocean Avenue agent contact. Megan seen recently near Ashcroft County." She didn't speak, didn't move, just let the flyer drift from her hand to the floor as the customer walked out without saying another word. And from somewhere behind her she heard a soft click. Megan didn't run this time. She knew it wouldn't matter. She went back upstairs to her room above the hardware store and waited. Not because she was brave, but because the house had already followed her too far for her escape to mean anything. She began to sketch without knowing why drawing the floor plan of a house she never finished walking through. Rooms that twisted onto themselves, staircases that vanished halfway down, doors that didn't open but pulsed like lungs. She pinned them to the walls, filled every inch with overlapping paper. Then one morning the drawings were gone, and in their place photographs had been tacked up. The same layout, same angle, same light, but captured, not drawn. The photos were grainy and colorless, and each one had something barely visible in the corners, something watching. Megan tried to burn them all, but the flames wouldn't catch. The paper only smoked and curled, but never blackened, never disappeared. That night, she sat on her bed, eyes open, ears tuned to the hum in the walls, and for the first time, the dreams came while she was awake. She saw the house not as it stood in Amityville, but as a living thing stretching beyond its foundation, built not with wood, but with memory. Its structure made of impressions of every person who had ever walked through its halls. The guilt, the anger, the fear soaked into its beams. And now it wanted Megan not just to join them, but to witness them. The dreams pulled her deeper until she was in rooms she didn't recognize, hearing conversations she never had, whispers in her ear that spoke in her own voice. She saw herself selling the house to faceless buyers, walking them through with a smile even as the windows bled. She begged to be let go, to forget to return to the world. But the house didn't want her to forget. It wanted to be remembered to be shared, and so it let her wake up. But when she opened her eyes, she was back at 112 Ocean Avenue, standing in the foyer, camera in hand, ready to shoot the perfect wide angle of the stairwell. The front door creaked shut behind her without a breeze. She walked through each room, the same, yet not the same. Each corner turned her around until she realized she was no longer mapping the house. The house was mapping her, recording her reactions, her choices, her fear, and feeding on it. Upstairs, the flickering hallway light was now steady and bright, a trap disguised as progress. She moved toward it, and the floor groaned, not beneath her weight, but in anticipation. Then she saw the mirror again, the same one from every dream. But this time, her reflection didn't tilt. It smiled. And in that moment, Megan understood. She was no longer the viewer. She was the listing. She was the invitation. And someone else out there was scrolling. Someone else would see the post. And someone else would begin to dream. And when they did, they would find her there. Not screaming, not crying, just waiting to welcome them home. She wasn't the first, and she knew it now. There had been others, people whose names had never made it into the newspaper, whose disappearances were chalked up to cold feet or midlife crises. People who had walked into the house with full lives and walked out as echoes barely remembered. Megan found their traces in the corners of the photographs, the ones she hadn't taken. She began noticing initials scratched faintly into the wood of the banister. MLJCP. And one day her own M appeared beneath the others. But it was older, darker, worn, like it had been there longer than hers should have been. In the basement, the walls were covered in wallpaper that peeled back to reveal more wallpaper. Layers of pattern stacked like sediment, each style from a different era, each layer with its own set of names carved underneath like gravestones for the unseen. And when she ran her fingers across the wall, it felt warm, not like sunlight, but like breath. There was a hum to the foundation, a kind of low pulsing sound that she felt more than heard, like a memory refusing to be forgotten. She climbed the narrow servant staircase to the attic where the window with the arched top glared at her like a lidless eye. Inside the attic, she found a trunk full of old negatives photo film, undeveloped, brittle with age. She held one up to the light and saw her own silhouette on the front porch, caught mid-turn as if hearing something behind her. She dropped it and stepped back, and the floor groaned again, this time with satisfaction. It was never about selling the house. It was about spreading it, making it known, etching it into the fabric of memory through dreams, stories, images. Every person who saw it became part of it. Every viewer was a floorboard, a nail, a beam. Megan began to lose track of time. Days blurred together, nights never ended. She would blink and be outside, only to blink again and find herself back in the foyer. Her clothes changed without her noticing, her hair shorter or longer depending on which mirror she looked into. She began to smell salt in the air, though Amityville was not close to the ocean. She heard clocks ticking in reverse behind doors that had no rooms. She tried to map it again, but the pencil lines bent and curled on the page like vines. And she realized the house didn't just move its shape, it moved her sense of self. She wasn't Megan anymore, not in the way she had been. She was the voice in the listing, the one that whispered, "You've already been here once." The internet still showed the photo now taken from above, as if from a bird or a ghost looking down on the property. And in the corner of the image, a woman was standing. Not Megan, but someone else. Someone new. She looked lost, but curious. A phone in her hand, turned toward the house, about to take a picture. Megan reached toward the screen, wanting to stop her, to say no, to say turn around. but her hand passed through the image like smoke. Her reflection stared back from the black monitor, unchanged, unblinking. A knock came at the front door, a soft one, almost polite. She didn't move. Another knock. Then the door opened on its own and a child no older than 10 stepped in, wearing a red raincoat and holding a small instant camera. He said nothing, just looked around, eyes wide like he had seen it before, maybe in a dream, maybe on a screen. He raised the camera, took a picture. The flash washed the room in white, and when Megan's vision cleared, the child was gone. But a new photograph lay on the floor, face down. She picked it up slowly, turned it over. It showed the house from outside, but every window had a face, and every face was hers. Slightly different expressions, but always her. Smiling, watching, waiting. She turned the photo over again, and on the back, written in block letters, it said, "Property still active." Her breath caught. The listing would never end. It would just change agents. She had become the bait, the breadcrumb, the haunted frame that caught attention and drew eyes. And now someone else would take the next step. Someone else would wake at 3:14 and see a house they'd never visited but always recognized. Someone else would try to trace the architecture only to realize they were walking in loops. Someone else would find that the house didn't need to be entered to enter them. Megan sat on the staircase just out of sight from the mirror waiting. Not with dread, but with familiarity. It was her turn to welcome someone to their showing. It was always someone's turn. The house made sure of it. The only way to forget it was never to see it in the first place. But even that wasn't safe anymore, because the photo was out there. The post was still live, and the ad that wouldn't die had one simple headline: "Dream listing, now available." Even in small towns with no signal, the listing found ways to reach. Flyers posted in hardware stores, pop-ups on gas station screens, even pages tucked between the folds of local newspapers. The house didn't need the internet, it needed imagination. And once someone imagined it even just once, the house had a thread to pull. Megan began hearing footsteps above her room at night, even when she lived on the top floor. A distant dragging sound like furniture being moved always around 3:14 a.m. She stopped checking clocks. It only made things worse. One night, she woke to the smell of paint thinner and old wood. Her hands were stained with soot. She didn't remember lighting a candle, but there were 4 burned down on the floor around her in a perfect square. She didn't scream. She simply stood and said, "I understand now," because she did. The house was no longer asking for entry. It was asking for continuity, for memory, for caretakers. Megan's eyes turned dark at the edges. Not from evil, but from overexposure, like a photo that had soaked in too much light. Her voice became quieter, softer, almost melodic, and when she spoke, people listened even when they didn't want to. Especially when they didn't want to. She took up a job at a local antique shop organizing picture frames. She smiled when customers picked one up and paused. It didn't matter what photo they placed inside. Eventually it would show the same thing. A hallway, a staircase, a shadow at the top just out of frame. They never brought those frames back. Some didn't come back at all, and Megan just kept arranging. In her sleep, she whispered new captions. She could name which windows had seen which floorboards groaned out, which names, which doorknobs turned most easily at night. She no longer tried to warn people. The house had taught her something vital. People never believe a whisper unless they're already listening. So the house waited, and Megan waited. And a new person, curious and unaware, always eventually found their way in. Because if the house couldn't reach you with a scream, it would reach you with silence. And silence always spreads. And maybe the scariest part isn't the house itself, but the fact that we're still drawn to it. Drawn to stories like this. We scroll through listings, click on cursed addresses, watch walkthroughs of places no one lives anymore. We want to see it. We want to feel a chill. We want to be just close enough to danger without getting pulled in. But that's how it starts. A photo, a dream, a detail you can't unsee. Megan's story wasn't just about her. It was about how easily we open the door without realizing it. By looking, by listening, by remembering. The house only needs one thing to survive attention. And thanks to one real estate agent who thought she could handle a listing now, it has yours. There's no final page to scroll to, no safe ending to click away from, because the house doesn't close. It stays listed, it updates, it spreads. And if you start seeing flickering lights in your hallway or waking at 3:14 for no reason or feeling like something's memorizing the way you move through your own home, don't panic. You probably didn't do anything wrong. You just noticed, and that's always enough. Thanks for staying with us through another night at Haunted Real Estate. We hope you're okay. Really, check in with yourself, stay grounded, and if you're ever browsing late and you see an old house with black shutters and arched windows, skip it. Don't zoom in, don't save it for later, don't share the link. Just scroll past and never look back. Because some listings don't just wait to be found, they find you.